Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be and is a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
Fellas.
Hey.
Hello.
We're here we are. We're trying to take the isolation out of the isolation and reach all of our good people and our heretics all over the damned world. And they all are all over the damned world.
Yeah.
And we just want to bring some
cheer
and some biblical nonsense to your week. So here we are again. And
putting the social back into social distancing.
Totally. You know what, people? This thing doesn't have an off switch. It's just going to happen. So you can count on us. And I haven't really done a lot of research on how to podcast while intubated, but we're going to make it work.
We'll make it happen. We can do it.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. Our voices might sound slightly different, but we're going to give it a try.
I'm just going to slam my forehead onto the table in Morse code for everybody.
We'll talk to Hawking's people, Stephen Hawking's people. Right. We'll figure it out.
So here we are, episode 133. It's going to be it's a lot of fun. I am going to talk about what to do if bad weather is expected.
Indeed.
A long time ago. I'm going to talk about the weather report from 2600 BCE.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. We need to know.
Yeah.
And then I am going to talk about the God. I'm going to explore and reveal unto you the nature of Almighty God.
The unchanging, ever consistent nature of the God.
Right.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to bring it home with a little call to action for us as skeptics and atheists in the world that is to come. So
that's right.
Yup.
Yeah.
So stick around for that and plenty of antics. And just to remind people, our YouTube channel is being populated frequently by our friend Vern. So go there and you can find individual segments if you only want a third of the week's bullshit. And you can send to friends. You can send to friends that you are socially distant from, and when you would normally tell them about our segments face to face. This is a great way to share and let people know you love them.
And of course, we have merch on sale still, and apparently you can turn a cotton shirt into a face mask now. Who knew?
That's right. And I'm breaking this to my fellow uncles as well. We are going to have an exciting new item on the merch site very, very soon. And I will tell you what that is when it's up, because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm all ears. Is it a weasel? I hope it's weasels.
It's weasel adjacent. It's weasel adjacent. Yeah.
Okay.
There are forbidden animals involved. So
I have seen this thing, and it's going to be very fun. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So that announcement to follow sometime soon. But until that time, let us go somewhere together and worship other gods. Isn't that what it says in the Bible? Let us go and worship other gods together. I just love that line. I love that little conspiratorial moment in the Bible. It's kind of cute. So
Hey. You want to worship other gods?
Yeah, like the guy with the trench coat and opens it up, and there's like all these little idols hanging there. The Jews were very, very vulnerable to that. So anyway, let's do a show.
Hey, Uncle Doug.
Present.
Here's the thing. Stories don't just... They often don't appear out of nowhere. You hear, somebody heard a story from somebody else who heard a story from somebody else, and they get changed and they get moved around, and that's a time-honored tradition.
Sure.
And I think, Uncle Mark, you have something that you would like to add unto the annals of that.
It's the Annals. I think it's pronounced Annals. And
yes. I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's what anal means. So a story. So yes, I've actually plagiarized something today, and you'll understand why when we get somewhere through the middle of this thing. So, guys, we have from time to time been a little hard on the good book. Well, the only book that
you said hard on.
I did after anal. That being one or all of several dozen versions of the good Lord's one and only, never changing, singular, and inerrant word, the Bible. And not just because the Bible was not written by one author, but dozens at minimum, the bulk of whom did not know the people or witness the events they were writing about, which will come as a shock to most American Christians. And not because it has been compiled, uncompiled, switched up, chopped up, added to, and embellished by a busload of various councils and popes and bishops loads of times before it ever found its way to good King James. And not just because the blizzard of languages and dialects the various old stories were told in and then first written down in didn't always translate well into the Aramaic or the Greek or the Latin or the English versions as it traveled through space and time, and who knows how adept the translators along the way really were. It's the result of an absurd game of telephone long before Jesus invented the telephone. So, sure, all those are good reasons to kick the old brick around the cul-de-sac a bit, but today's main reason is the Bible is often such an embarrassing work of plagiarism. So let us take what for some unbelievable reason is the most important story for most biblical literalists to scream from the top of Mount Ararat is literally true in every detail. That of Noah and his small family, who had never built so much as a pinewood derby car, suddenly gathering together enough timber in a scrubby desert climate to build a seaworthy wooden ship larger than the Queen Mary, and then gathering two or more, and or more is important, of each of millions of species from across 6 continents, which they fed without bloodshed with food, all the while managing a nauseating mudslide of urine and shit every single day, 7 days a week, for 40 days, nights are included, so dumb, plus a year of drifting once the rain stopped. Then, of course, the ark came to rest on a mountain without splitting into a million pieces, and killing everyone inside this ginormous methane torpedo, and the year-long truce somehow maintained between the carnivores and their prey for however many thousands of miles it took to get them back to their natural post-flood habitats and fuck a whole population of their kind into existence. Then, of course, the whole story gets a lot less silly when Noah plants a vineyard, hangs out for several seasons until the grapes are worth anything, makes wine, gets plowed, and passes out naked. It's what we here at The Heretic call going the full Uncle Doug. Then his 2 sons try to cover his ass up with a blanket. Ham sees his dad naked. Narrator's note, we will later learn in Leviticus this is a huge no-no. Listen to episode 9 for that. And depending on which Christian you listen to, this is either how black people happened, the curse of Ham, or he was banished with his already person of color wife, suspiciously named Egyptus, to Africa, where, boom, their grandson was Pharaoh of the Bible in the sudden bustling civilization of Egypt, complete with pyramids and loads of other durable, pointy architecture. All it fucking makes is sense. Why in the everlasting fuck it has to be this story that they insist is the truest one of all the true stories, that the billions of people, as of this recording, who still live on this earth, are descended from 8 people a few thousand years ago, is crazy. But it is the story that they insist upon. They could go with Job, who can say there wasn't some holier-than-thou asshole who just happened to have history's longest streak of terrible luck. Or they could go with Samson, because history is full of murdery, pious idiots. Or they could go with a dozen others. But Noah was a real guy, and he built a stupendously huge boat with knowledge he for sure had, with labor and materials he did so have access to. The end. Except, not really, uncles. A guy did this all... Yeah, it's true. A guy did this all before Noah, or, well, the important bits, and his name was Utnapishtim, a god and a hero from the oldest intact written story in human civilization, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And Utnapishtim built an ark and survived the Great Deluge 1,400 years before the totally super true shut-up story of Noah found its way to Genesis. That's right. Noah and his half-mile-long poo pontoon is plagiarism, a stolen story, or in nautical terms that apply here, piracy. We talked about our friend Utnapishtim in episode 53. It's a fascinating story and is similar in all the important ways to Noah. The thieves who wrote Genesis had to do some trims. Utnapishtim's story involves conversations about multiple gods, and he himself had been elevated to a god post-flood, so these semi-monotheistic Jews had to toss that. And of course, they tacked on all the weird shit about a drunk Noah and Ham, etc. But in every other way, they are extremely similar. How similar?
Except that the boat was a cube, wasn't it?
The boat, yeah, it was like 10, I can't remember what the dimensions were, but it was fucking gigantic. It was like, it was 100 meters to a side. Right?
Yeah. It was a box.
And it was a cube.
It was a Borg cube.
It was a fucking Borg cube.
And all the animals will be assimilated.
But in every other way, they are extremely similar. How similar? Let me read you some of the lines from the first.
And lies.
Yeah,
sure.
First,
all of them.
First from the Utnapishtim story in Gilgamesh, and then from the Noah story in Genesis. Shall I? Gilgamesh. Like Apsu, you shall roof it. Genesis. Make a roof for the ark. Gilgamesh. Pitch I poured into the inside. Genesis. Cover it inside and out with pitch. Gilgamesh. Into the ship all my family and relatives. Genesis. Go into the ark, you and all your household. Gilgamesh. I opened the window. Genesis. Noah opened the window of the ark. Gilgamesh. On Mount Nasir the boat grounded. Genesis. The ark came to rest upon the mountains. Gilgamesh. The dove went out and returned. Genesis. Sent forth the dove, and the dove came back. Gilgamesh. I sent forth a raven. Genesis. Noah sent forth a raven. And it just goes on and on and on. And, you know,
look, Mark, let's not quibble about who plagiarized who.
Who plagiarized who.
Let's not bicker and argue over.
And finally, Gilgamesh, the gods smelled the sweet savor. Genesis, and the Lord smelled the sweet savor. So that sure is a lot of coincidence, isn't it, guys? If you were teaching Creative Writing 101 in college and two freshmen turned in a creative writing assignment with these similarities, they'd have a problem, wouldn't they? So it's pretty damning. So we've established that Utnapishtim was the original flood story, and since he is obviously a god of some kind and therefore was not actually real, neither is Noah. The end. But did you guys think I brought you on this journey to rehash our old friend and the guy who sunk Noah's wooden battleship, Utnapishtim? No? Well, just a little bit, but not really. You see, Noah cribbed off Utnapishtim, but the ancienter Utnapishtim cribbed off of an even ancienter story about a guy called Ziasudra. It's true. So, journey back with me, if you will, beyond the 3rd century BCE gong show of Noah in Genesis, beyond even the far older but amazingly intact story of Utnapishtim in Gilgamesh, to a place called Eridu. Now, Eridu currently is a ruin of stone and clay bricks, almost entirely covered in sand, not far from the Euphrates River in southern Iraq. But it is a very important sand-covered ruin for a couple of reasons. One is it has an arguable claim to be the oldest city on Earth, meaning it may be the first place set up as a distinctly permanent settlement in a world mostly peopled by nomadic groups who followed game and seasonal food availabilities. It had stone and mud brick structures and canals to bring the abundance of fresh water from the massive marshes that existed nearby. That is, until Saddam Hussein drained them to suppress their troublesome inhabitants, known as the Marsh Arabs. Its earliest bits are believed to have been built around 5400 BCE, making it 7,420 years old at least. So That's super cool.
What's it called?
Eridu. And the oldest bit was the very modest 12 by 15 foot baked clay brick temple of Enki, who is a local water god that was said to have come up from a freshwater aquifer in the area. And as Sumerian culture grew and other cities sprung up in Mesopotamia, they recognized the city of Eridu and that tiny little temple as the first place the gods delivered the rights of kingship from heaven to man. So over time, Enki grew from the local water god of the area to a god of kind of huge importance all over Sumer. This tiny temple was added onto and buried under additions to it, including a small ziggurat 18 times over thousands of years. So it was obviously of great importance.
Yeah.
And it was 75.
Is kind of like the castle in the Holy Grail, right? Fell over a second in the swamp, but the 18th cigarette stayed.
Exactly. Well, the Mayans did that. I think a lot of cultures did that. The Mayans did that too, where they built on top of. They just kept building on top of their temples.
Wasn't there something of like a king? It was a show of supremacy over the previous regime to just literally like one up them,
just cover their shit up.
Yeah.
So it's 75 miles north of Eridu. There's an ancient city called Nippur that a broken cuneiform tablet describing the beginning of kingship in Eridu, and so named the Eridu Genesis, was unearthed in 1893. It was translated shortly thereafter and believed to have been written around 2600 BCE. On it is what is called the Sumerian King List, which this has kind of surprised me. The stupid connections that we start making, which randomly got a mention in my segment of the ridiculous book The Chariots of the Gods in episode 129, because it lists the reigns of the pre-deluge Sumerian kings in the tens of thousands of years, which are clearly legendary embellishments, but Eric von Daniken, the idiot author of that idiot book, took the numbers as literal truth, claiming Sumerian culture and writing must surely be 500,000 years old. So that's stupid. But one of the kings in the Eridu Genesis was a guy by the name of Ziasudra. The king list, says Ziasudra was the king of another Sumerian city, Shurappak. According to the tablet, the gods had decided man had become too noisy and decided to solve the problem by sending a massive flood. Sound familiar? The god Enki didn't want to destroy all mankind, but the decision had been made and there was no going back. So Enki called Ziasudra over to the wall that conceals the gods behind it and whispered to him to build a huge boat.
I love that they're hiding behind a wall.
Yeah, well, that makes as much sense as anything else.
I'm just imagining them peeking up over it and looking at us like, what's going on?
Just like we all are right now, right? Just behind our walls.
Totally.
So then there's a fragment missing, and we rejoin our hero mid-deluge, which in this possibly original version of the familiar Noah myth lasts only 7 days and 7 nights, until at last the sun appears and Ziasudra opens a window and makes a sacrifice to the gods. It turns out there is archaeological and geological evidence of a fairly huge regional flood in what is now Iraq around 2900 BC. And since it is big events that find their way into legend rather than small day-to-day ones, nobody remembers the legend of running some errands on a Tuesday afternoon. Someone having the good luck and wherewithal to get a bunch of their shit into a sizable boat before the flood hit would, to any survivors at the time, seem an incredibly lucky fellow. Over time, if the story maintained around the cooking fire every night for years, in a time where the world was worked solely via magic and the whims of capricious gods, the lucky fellow could easily be seen as favored by the gods. And in time, if you needed a story to prove that if you do what our book says, you will be favored of the gods, just like the guy in this totally true, amazing story, the lucky fellow who heaped his shit in a boat before the flood could be very useful indeed. It also turns out there is no evidence for Ziasudra having been a real person or king at all. The only mention of him being anywhere is on this one fragmented clay tablet. So for those keeping score at home, the legend of Utnapishtim, a person who clearly never existed, was grafted from the older legend of Ziasudra, a king there is no evidence of ever having been real, which was in turn grafted by the authors of Genesis to create a character called Noah and events surrounding him for which there is no corroborating evidence of any kind. Seems a tad shaky when you look at it that way, doesn't it, guys? But the good news is...
Can I just make a point of order?
Yeah.
And just... This is for all the writers of future holy books that are listening to the show.
Yeah.
You can only say the number of nights if it's different from the number of days. like a vacation,
right.
You know, 6 days, 5 nights. If it's the same number, don't fucking say it. You're wasting time. We all know it.
Yeah, it's not. It really isn't poetry, guys. It's just redundancy. So the good news is everybody knows the pedigree of the Noah flood story. So nobody, certainly not in the modern nuclear-armed United States of America of 2020, believes in this interesting but preposterous old fable. Can you imagine if grown-ass adults who vote actually believed in this poppycock? That would be crazy. So yeah, that's the story of Ziasudra, guys.
I seem to have this memory of this museum I went to about a year ago, but it's pretty unclear.
Yeah.
I called it a museum. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, and the museum had dinosaurs as well, so that...
Well, that is pretty crazy.
Yeah. All it makes is sense.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty interesting, plagiarism. It's what's for dinner.
It's what's for dinner. So with that, let's sail on.
Let's move on. Uncle Mark.
Yes.
I think it's safe to say that the editorial position of this podcast is that God may not be great, but he sure is weird.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we can get there. I think we'll eventually get there. I mean, God is great, and you're right, a bit weird, but at least what he is consistent, 100%.
Right, front to back.
I am going to say that, like, if there is an editorial position of this show, and I don't think we have to be any more consistent than the Bible does on this. Part of the conceit of this show since its inception is that the Bible, the good book, the holy and infallible word of the only living God.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't the whole that. It isn't any of that.
No, hold on. What are you saying?
Well, I'm just saying that the more I read it, the more confused I get that there are so many very smart people who take that book seriously. Apparently, there are more than 2 billion people. Right? Yeah. More than 2 billion people in this world profess Christianity to be their creed. And if the Christians I've met are at all representative, that means that literally hundreds of them have actually read the foundational text and stayed. So, well, you'd think it'd be a better book. But as you say, the Bible is inconsistent. It is constantly contradicting itself. I used to think that this was a bug, but I now realize it is a feature of the Bible. What could possibly be better for crafting 1,000 different versions of the same, quote, religion than a book that can effectively be quoted to support literally any position? Imagine the flexibility of the thing. There's one God, there are many gods. God is merciful, God is vengeful. You're the chosen people, but God hates you. Every possible idea is on the table.
Yeah, it's like the world's most boring Rorschach test.
Yeah.
Right? You see anything you want in those pages.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. So I thought I'd look at some Bible inconsistencies today. We've covered some before. In episode 47, we talked at length about the first 2 books of the Bible and their conflicting timelines and methods for the creation. So we know that the book is not afraid to contradict itself. And there are plenty of weird moments where the numbers don't line up from book to book, where somebody has 3 sons in one chapter but 4 in the next. But today, I just want to talk about God. If this book has a central character or something that should be consistent throughout, it should be him, right?
Should be.
Ought to, yeah.
Well, and I'm going to do a big shout out, by the way, to the Skeptics Annotated Bible website, which has a lovely sort of, they've compiled a whole big list of contradictory things. So I drew heavily from that. Now, as we go through this, be careful. You might find yourself confused. Just know that this is not God's fault. As 1 Corinthians 14 says, God is not the author of confusion. But as 1 Corinthians 1 points out, yes, he is. So let's get started. First off, let's be clear, God is just his title. The dude has a name. His name is Jehovah. At least that's his name according to Psalms, Isaiah, and Exodus. Of course, 3 chapters earlier in Exodus, God's name was I Am, and 28 chapters later, his name is Jealous. The psalmist also calls his name Yah, or Jah, J-A-H. So, dealer's choice on that one, I guess.
Is that where the Rastafarians get it, I imagine?
Jah-man.
Is that where Ja Rule gets his name?
Yeah.
Yes.
It means God rules. So the God of the Bible is an all-powerful being, and if he likes you, you can be all-powerful too. It says so all over the Bible. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all say it. With God, all things are possible, or for with God, nothing shall be impossible. In Jeremiah, behold, I am the Lord God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for the Lord? So that's cool. Also sounds a little gay, but we'll just let it go.
Just a wee bit gay.
Hey, what the fuck? I will be the arbiter of these things. Continue.
Okay. Well, can we get a ruling then?
It's a little gay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Yes, he is all-powerful. That much is very clear throughout. But, if you have an enemy that God is helping you vanquish, you better hope they don't have iron chariots, because in Judges chapter 1, God was obviously useless against those. They're scary. And Mark chapter 6, even Jesus, God's main man, can be prevented from doing cool miracles. I think he just got tired, like Uri Geller on Johnny Carson. And of course, though God can do anything, Hebrews 6 tells us that it's impossible for him to lie.
Really?
That brings us to his holy nature. If God can't lie because he's incapable of sin, Numbers 23 and 1 Samuel 15 both offer basically the same assessment. God is not a man that he should lie, neither the Son of Man that he should repent. Malachi 3 makes it clear, for I am God, I change not. Now, Ezekiel also says, I, the Lord, have spoken it, it shall come to pass, and I will do it, I will not go back, neither will I spare, neither will I repent. Which totally makes sense. Why would an omnipotent, all-knowing, perfect being repent? Wouldn't repentance mean a change of heart? Right.
And to whom? Yeah.
At least, yeah. It would mean a change of heart or a change of mind. How would that even work for an omniscient being? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Except that God keeps fucking up, so he has to do it. Remember all those episodes where I kept trying to get through Exodus? Well, God was basically just a really shitty dungeon master and kept sending Moses and his millions of Jews around in circles in the middle of the desert. In Exodus 32, Moses calls him out and was like, dude, what the fuck? And God, quote, said, it said, quote, the Lord repented of the evil which he thought to do unto his people. So, oops.
Yeah. I remember, Uncle Dan, and I got into that discussion with those Christians that a while back, I guess about 6 months ago.
Right.
And that was one of the points I kept bringing up to them is like, they were like, you can't judge God. He's beyond anything that is human. And it's like, but in your book, he's constantly being a petulant brat.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be jealous and have to repent and also be immutable. Like, I don't understand why this inconsistency isn't winning this argument for me right now.
Right? I would point out to them Judges 2, where a bad generation of Israelites were being very naughty little beasties, and the Lord somehow literally, quote, sold them into the hands of their enemies. No word on how much their enemies paid the Lord for his chosen people, but then they were, sad, and God heard them complaining and, quote, for it repented the Lord because of their groanings by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. So he delivered them from the hands of their enemies. I guess they had learned their lesson. And then there was the time when God looked at his creations on the earth, namely we humans, and repented himself that he had ever even created us. Just 6 books into Genesis, quote, and it repented the Lord that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him at his heart. So that was where, Uncle Mark, he came in and drowned everybody after that one.
Yeah. That's the flood.
So, or we could go to Samuel, 1 Samuel, where God gave Saul the crown of Israel and gave these instructions for his first act as king. Now go smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass.
Go
and
slay that ass.
Right? Slay That Ass, which was actually Saul's best album, I thought.
Yeah, it's in the Bible. I mean,
it's in the Bible.
yeah.
But unfortunately, that idiot Saul, he did kill all of the Amalekite people, but he kept Agag, the king of Amalek, alive. Also, he spared a bunch of the livestock, which seems reasonable, but just pissed God off to no end. Quote, "It repenteth me that I have set Saul to be king, for he is turned back from following me and hath not performed my commandments." So, if you don't do, if you don't commit your genocide right, God will repent himself that he ever made you king in the first place. So God never repents unless he does, and he doesn't lie, except that didn't he command Abraham to kill his son Isaac? And then, psych, JK, don't kill him? Wasn't that a lie? I mean, God had previously included thou shalt not kill among his amazing top 10 commandments, right? So why did he command Abraham to do this? Well, command isn't the word the Bible uses. The King James Version of Genesis 22 says, "And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham." So it was a temptation? Does God do that?
Well, and isn't it an enticement to do something you want to do already? Right? So
maybe.
I'm just saying, really didn't like his son.
Well, that's not uncommon.
I guess not. But here's the thing about temptation. It seems weird that God would do it, but 2 Samuel 24 opens with an intensely confusing story. The first verse says, quote, "And again the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved David against them to say, 'Go number Israel and Judah.'" So David goes and conducts a census, which was apparently very, very wrong for some reason. As soon as David hears the numbers of his men, women don't count, obviously, we get this, quote, "And David's heart smote him after that he had numbered the people. And David said unto the Lord, I have sinned greatly that I have done. And now I beseech thee, O Lord, take away the iniquity of thy servant, for I have done very foolishly." After which the Lord let him pick his own punishment, which was cute. So I guess, the Lord does tempt people. Hell, even the Lord's Prayer begs God to, quote, "lead us not unto temptation." But it's clearly a genuine concern. Unless, of course, you ask James chapter 1, verse 13, which is also clear on this, quote, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man." So the God of the Bible is, let's just say, complex. If you ever were to meet the guy, I would highly suggest you just run away. But don't worry, you won't meet him. You can't see him. John says a whole bunch of times that some variant of, quote, "no man hath seen God at any time." Hell, Exodus says, there shall no man see me and live. So you're definitely not going to see the guy.
And live.
Except the Lord appeared to Abraham in Genesis 12, 17, and 18, and in Exodus and in Acts. Isaac saw him twice. Jacob not only saw him, but wrestled with him and won, or maybe it was a tie. Moses saw his face and his, quote, "back parts." Also, Moses took Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 other guys, and they all saw God too. Samson's parents saw him. Micaiah, whoever the fuck that is, saw him. Job, David, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Amos, Habakkuk, and Jesus all saw God.
And
but
lived.
Not counting all of those guys, God is definitely the guy, as 1 Timothy 6 says, whom no man hath seen nor can see.
Fuck. It's such a mess.
It is a mess. Let's talk a little bit about his all-knowingness. It's well established. John said he, quote, knoweth all things. Psalms says he, quote, knoweth the secrets of the heart. Job said that no thought can be withheld from him. Jeremiah 23 says, quote, can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him? Saith the Lord. Do I not fill heaven and earth? But Psalms 139 one-ups even that. Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up to heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. So the Lord knows everything. He knows what's in your mind and your heart. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He is on earth, in heaven, and in hell. You cannot hide from this guy.
No.
Yeah, unless, of course, you're in the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve successfully hid from God, such that he had to call out, where are you? Or their son Cain, who, after killing his brother Abel, went and hid from the Lord's presence east of Eden in the land of Nod. Or the number of times God's cell phone reception was shitty in heaven, so he had to come down to earth to see what was going on. Like when he came down to check out the Tower of Babel, or when he descended to see if Sodom and Gomorrah were really as bad as folks were saying. And basically, the whole book is one example after another of God setting up tests to know men's hearts, or to find out if they love him. And he never seems to know the answer in advance. He did it to Moses and the Israelites. He did it to Abraham, to Hezekiah. Hell, he turned it into a sports book with Job. But that was just for fun. He just had a bet with the devil. That one doesn't count. So there you go. The never-changing, always consistent God of the Bible.
All it makes is sense.
Boy, the show's been a little hard on the Bible today. I think we ought to lay off of it because, if we keep doing this, people might doubt the veracity of its total truth. And that could be a problem.
Oh, no. I hope that's not how people were taking this.
No, I think you were writing a line there, Dan.
I feel like I would hate for anybody to listen to all of that and think to themselves, wait, is it possible this isn't actually true? What
a total shit show. And I mentioned it a little, I kind of alluded to it in my segment on Ziasudra, but I can't remember where I found this statistic a couple years ago that Americans were asked how many authors the Bible had. American Christians were at, and they most of them said one.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's God.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It's Jeebus. So
on top of everything else you told us, Uncle Dan, it turns out he's a shitty writer too.
He's a terrible writer. Look, you could make a much better religion out of literally any book. Pick any, like Harry Potter or the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or fucking The Shining.
The Celestine Prophecy.
Matter. You can literally make a better religion from any of those than this one.
Yeah, the Bible was the original kind of open source situation, and so what you get is 100 different authors interpreting one character, and it's a shit show.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there you go. Even the Christians don't know who they're praying to.
Well, with that,
I would say especially.
Yeah. With that, let's get out of here.
Let's do it.
Y'all,
hello,
fellas.
Yeah.
Listen, we've said it before. We're going to keep saying it. This is one of the ways in which we make a little bit of cash money because people out there give us some of it. But it's a weird time. So some people are dropping out. Some people are dropping in. We're not mad at anybody for anything.
Nope.
If you need to not give us money for right now, we get it.
Yeah.
But that's not what some folks have done. Some folks their income is stable, they are secure, they are happy, and they're deciding to give us money. So we owe some thanks to some folks. and I will thank them now. Thanks so much to Chad, to that one furry listener. Thanks to Jim, to Kathy, Caleb, Jason, and Sue.
Right on.
So these are all people who have decided that they can kick in a few bucks. Thanks so much. They all went to, we assume, to howtoheretic.com, and they found the tab that gets them
Support
to
us.
Patreon.
Yep.
Well, and then they signed up. They decided to give us a little bit,
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
and you can also. So
Yeah.
if you feel like it, if it's something that if we're giving you a little bit of a ray of sunshine in your otherwise horrifying post-apocalyptic nightmare.
I think it's mid-apocalyptic at this point.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
yeah.
true.
Right.
We're still in it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
that is a very good correction. And,
Yeah, if I can give you that
I'll
note.
take it.
Just if I can
I'll
give
take
it.
it.
Yeah.
I'll take it. So yeah, if your mid-apocalypse allows you to give us a little bit of money, please feel free to go do that at howtoheretic.com. Also, give us 5 stars only on any of the places where you can do that. No other amount of stars is acceptable. And I don't know, let's just keep doing a show.
Yeah, let's keep doing it. And you know what, guys? We're really committed to keeping this going for your sanity and for ours.
Yeah, truthfully.
Every week.
Otherwise, how do we know what day of the week it is?
Yeah.
If we're not recording a show, we literally can't keep track of it.
That's right. We record on Sunday, and Dan is like, if I didn't have this, I would not know what Sunday was. So, so let's we're in this together. Let's keep it going together, and we love you. Uncle Dan.
Hey!
So we're in a pretty weird fucking time here right now, buddy.
Yeah. Hang on a second. I'm adjusting my Utnapishtim. Yeah, it is a very strange moment in our world history where this may. You know what's interesting? I just thought of this. This is the first time there have been world pandemics before. Certainly not with the speed of this one, because we can fly everywhere and everybody does. But also, like, we've never had one before where, like, we've got a bunch of science happening and everybody's communicating with everybody around the world. Like, we're keeping track of the whole damn thing. That's kind of cool and new, but
Way to rescue a silver lining, Uncle Dan.
well, it's
a little terrifying. It's a lot to think about. When I think I read yesterday that like 80% of the world is in lockdown or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
What's keeping that other 20%? Get on it.
Doubt.
Yeah, they're going to church is what fucking keeping them. But anyway, Doug,
God.
you've got something cheerful to talk about. I
Talk
think.
to us.
Yeah, well, dear uncles, all of you out there weathering this pandemic, this is undoubtedly a dark time. And, our species is being laid low by a psychedelic soccer ball so tiny that we only recently developed the technology to be able to see it. And only because of the incredible intellect, effort, and achievement of people far smarter than us do we even know the nature of this deadly particle or have any idea how to stop it. So most of you listening to this show are in the United States, which is just the way it is. So this existential dread and sense of helplessness is only compounded by the incompetent, soulless, and downright vindictive leadership we have to guide us through this crisis. And to all of our listeners who are not in the United States, can I come live with you? For those of us
although it's not like their negligence doesn't affect the rest of the world.
Totally.
right.
We're big and powerful, and our germs get to everybody.
Yeah, precisely. This is truly a global pandemic, and we have to think that way. And for those of us paying attention, and let's face it, if you're listening to this show, you are probably not getting your news from Fox. This crisis is something that no one living has ever been through. Not to sound grim, but we are all going to know someone who will die from this. We are about to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and while we should not fear evil, we should respect it, and we should do what we're told by experts as far as social distancing, staying home, and washing hands. Unfortunately, and we'll spend some time on this, not everyone is taking this seriously. Some people simply don't think it's a big deal, and some people think it's a hoax and are going to churches, beaches, gatherings, and in a few incredibly disturbing cases, actively trying to spread the virus to own the libs. Add to that our dangerous deficit in leadership, and it's obvious that this is going to get worse before it gets better. So, what we're seeing is a reordering of our society on basically every level. On the most basic level, we are seeing our capitalist economy confront a challenge that it is not designed to deal with. And like it or not, we're seeing socialist and communist countries and even some of the world's most despicable dictatorships deal with this better than we are. But this is not a politics or an economics podcast. However, there are several distinct and potentially deadly religious angles to this crisis. One that is directly affecting us is the fact that our state here, your audio uncles, is one of the last states to impose a statewide mandatory stay-home order. In fact, as of this record, it still has not been imposed, even though we are watching the virus bloom in our state.
But it has been heavily suggested.
It has been heavily suggested.
It's been given as a sort of best practice.
That's leadership
nice.
for you.
Yeah, our governor basically just came out and said, "Be reverent." That's basically what happened in
Everybody
Utah.
fold your arms.
Yeah.
And it's possible that our dolt of a governor is taking his cues from Donald Trump, who is still not taking this crisis seriously, leading those that want proximity to the throne to do the same. Listeners will no doubt find what I'm about to say to be close to heresy, but the Mormon Church has been pretty proactive regarding this crisis. Back on March 11th, they canceled all church services worldwide, and soon after closed all their temples, stopped sending out new missionaries, and even canceled General Conference. Don't worry. They're still doing General Conference, and we will absolutely talk about that next week as it's taking place as we speak.
Oh, do we have to?
It's our duty. But they're doing General Conference in front of an empty room. And man, if you thought that conference couldn't get more boring, you were mistaken. It turns out that the sweeping vistas of white people and creepy Borg uniformity of the Tabernacle Choir really punch the whole affair up a bit. So you take that away and you're left with not much. Uncle Mark and I were talking yesterday about the difference between the Mormon Church's response to the crisis versus the federal government, both of whom share the same ultra-conservative philosophy. One possible reason, and I'd love your guys' opinion on this, is that the Mormon Church is in this for the long haul, and none of the current leadership is facing an electorate. So the incentive to listen to the science works, whereas our current political leadership is only focused on the current news cycle and the most recent poll numbers. So that doesn't work. So the church has actually been really good about this. And I don't quite understand why.
I think Mormonism definitely has an anti-scientific strain, but it is nowhere near as insane as, say, evangelical Americans.
Right. I think so too.
There are, Mormons, there are shit tons of Mormon doctors and scientists, and science is not really as looked down upon generally by Mormonism as it is in other churches, except for archaeology. And that's true. No, it's true. They despise archaeologists, but everything else is kind of good to go.
Yeah. Well, their current prophet is a doctor. Let's not forget that. Also, here's the thing: the Mormon Church as an entity has been wildly pragmatic for several decades now. I mean, if they can amass $200 billion worth of wealth, we know that they can be practical people.
Right.
But that's like the organization. We also can look at the people themselves because they've been a bunch of shitheads.
Yeah,
I mean, just watching the videos and the pictures of the first wave of Mormon missionaries being brought home,
evacuated,
and their fucking families crowded together with signs cheering at each other like they're like nothing's going on, like they don't actually realize why these guys are coming home. It was
insane. It was maddening.
So the human beings, so the laity within the church are still idiots. But the church, but the organization itself is pretty pragmatic.
The institution has proven to be very good at rainy days, right? They're good at saving for rainy days.
Emergency preparedness is a big thing for Mormons in anticipation of kind of what we're going through right now. Not at all predicted,
right.
But stocking up in your basement with some oats isn't always a bad idea. But to that point, not all churches are being as proactive as the Mormon church is. Our news feeds are full of defiant pastors and their flocks that are either gathering in groups still or threatening to. What could be driving this? Could it be that organized religion has an inherent fear that if they don't give their followers their weekly fix, people might start to realize that they don't really need it? Could it be that pastors and priests are addicted to power and can't stand not having a room full of people venerate them, even if it puts those same people in danger? Could it be that reduced church attendance is married to a reduction in revenue? Yes, all of the things.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. But here's the thing. We will get through this. Even the bleakest of naysayers, amongst which I include myself, concede that we will eventually get to the other side of this. The only questions are, how long will it take? What will be the cost, both personally and societally? And what will the world we are about to enter look like? This is going to hurt, and we will all lose people we love. The virus will inevitably come back in the fall, and even when we have a vaccine, which we will have one day, this virus will be something we will have to manage for the rest of our lives. But this current crisis will end, and there will be a world on the far side of this, and that's what I want to talk about today, is what will that world look like, and what's our role, specifically as atheists and skeptics, in that new world? Because that world will be very different than the one we left behind several weeks ago. Our economy, our government, our personal habits, our jobs perhaps, our living situations will all be affected by this. And here's the thing. The worst of us are also looking at this moment, and they have dollar signs in their eyes. And by the worst of us, of course, I mean Jared Kushner. So it was a British nobleman in the 18th century named, truly, Baron Rothschild, who famously said, quote, "The time to buy is when there's blood in the streets, even if the blood is your own," end quote. So what he meant, of course, is when things are at their worst, the worst of us should take advantage. We are seeing this already with conservative governors and groups trying to use this crisis to roll back abortion rights, to push their anti-immigration agenda, and even to try and cancel the next election to prevent the impending electoral bloodbath that they have cultivated and so richly deserve. So what got me thinking about this week was watching a bunch of people on the right, especially on the religious right, with shocking honesty in the last few weeks, express what they are not willing to give up, no matter what, even if it makes the world a worse place. So religious people, for example, are refusing to give up their habit, not right, but habit, of going to church on Sundays to breathe each other's air and drink from the same fucking cup, and then march off to the grocery store as vindictive vectors. I'm sure you've seen the videos of churchgoers today, even today, packing into churches, shaking hands and hugging each other. It's a level of selfish arrogance that shocks the senses.
You want to know you want to know a worse one than the drinking from the same cup? Frank and I reported on Thank God I'm Atheist. Apparently, in some of the Eastern Orthodox traditions, they do the Eucharist from a spoon.
Really?
That they each put into their mouths.
Do they pass the same Eucharist from mouth to mouth like that ping pong game when we were teenagers?
Yeah, well, mothers feed it to their children like baby birds. It's a really cute thing that they do.
Then on top of all of this, look at what several prominent Republican leaders like the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, and our favorite Glenn Beck have said about old people and the economy. Remember, this is the party of Christian values, the sanctity of life, and the family. But if the Dow drops 4%, then it's into the wood chipper with Pop Pop and Meemaw. It's crazy.
They did it, and that was 2 weeks in. That nobody even knew the full scope of this thing yet. And they're like, well, fuck it. Everybody over 50 has just got to die,
right?
For my 401k.
And they say it like we're making jokes, but they say it overtly. This is not like they're not hinting at it or sort of like dog whistling it. They're just speaking it out loud.
Yeah, it's crazy, and just the very thought of that, the notion that none of us have missed a meal yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this is a crisis, and we're all contributing and suffering in our own way. But stores are still open, right?
Yeah.
Most of us have food in the house.
Yeah.
What is this going to look like if and when things get substantially worse? Right.
The electricity is still on,
which I don't think they will. To be honest,
the internet still works.
I don't think it's going to get any worse. I think people will get sick and hospitals will suffer, but it doesn't seem like those things are going.
No,
unless there are more earthquakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Dan. this isn't that kind of crisis, right? The water's going to stay on. Like Mark said, the electricity is going to stay on.
Well, it is so far.
Yeah, it is so far. But, it does make you think about what these people will be like if another crisis of a different nature comes along. And, like I said, all of us are going to be touched by this in ways that we should dread. So this is obviously a time for self-reflection. And while we look at ourselves and each other and our society, one of the things we should be pondering is what we're willing to give up or willing to give or willing to do to make sure that the world we're about to enter is better than the world we're leaving behind. I mean, let's be honest. The fact that you're listening to this show means you're above average intelligence. I don't mean to sound arrogant myself, but let's face it. This is a podcast where three dudes drone on about esoteric religious minutia. This ain't NASCAR. People like you are going to have an outsized role in shaping our new world. Otherwise, it will be shaped by the likes of Jared Kushner, Mike Pence, and Dan Patrick. So, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give? What are you willing to do to make the coming world better than the last? First and foremost, we've got to get through this. So social distancing, hand washing, and working from home if possible is a must. The nature of herd immunity means that for now, staying in sweatpants all day is your patriotic duty. Anyone intentionally ignoring these guidelines should be called out for the colossal asshole they are. And just a special shout out to any of our listeners working in the trenches of our defunct healthcare system. You are the best of us. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yes.
So, keep your sanity.
Yeah. Stay. God, you're the best. Thank you so much. Yep. But it is also said that the best revenge is living well. So I think we're all looking at various forms of self-improvement, and that's good. If nothing else, improving your health is a great way to combat the virus and will do wonders for your psychology. Is it time to lose weight or quit drinking or quit smoking? Is this crisis the impetus to go and take up those hobbies you've always wanted to and you can still do, independently and away from people, like hiking or biking or taking long walks or going for long drives and exploring your state? Is it time to take up reading again? Or have you been itching to start writing or finish that book or screenplay you've been kicking around? What about learning chess or Go or backgammon or crosswords? What about learning that language you always wanted to or giving drawing or painting a go? Exercising your mind is at least as important as exercising your body, and you can do all of that while quarantined. And, of course, we should all be looking for ways to be kinder and gentler in our new world. How well do you know your neighbors? How dependable a friend are you? How robust is your recycling effort, right? Like, these are things we can do. But to be specific to us and our listeners as atheists and skeptics, is this crisis enough of a paradigm shift for us to change how we exist in this new world? Maybe it's time to come out to your family as atheist or queer or trans. These are obviously very, very personal decisions, and I am only advocating reflection. But imagine how many more people would be alive by the end of this crisis if there had been less religion in this country. Maybe this fact needs to be rubbed in the faces of those who fucked this up so badly. If we ever have Thanksgiving again, is it time to tell your crazy religious or conspiratorial relative that enough is enough? And thanks to not be spreading deadly rumors in my presence anymore. Is it time to have that discussion with your friend or relative that you have been putting off because you know it's going to suck about your beliefs or lack thereof? Is it time to make the argument about why religious belief is not just dumb, but dangerous? If you are still going to church because of a relationship or obligation, is this crisis the thing to aid you in getting out? Has this shocked the system enough for you to finally be honest about who you are and why with the people you know and love? Is it time to share this and other atheist podcasts with friends and family to try and nudge them down the road to enlightenment?
Well, it's always time for that. It's always time.
It's always time for that.
Yeah. We don't need a plague. Guys, you don't need a plague to spread this show. But we got a plague on.
Yeah.
And these are all pretty grand acts and far, far easier said than done. But there are a million little acts that we can all do to build up a secular new world. Is it time to donate some money or some time to your favorite secular cause or take on a new one?
Or podcast.
Podcast. Is it? Yeah. Is it time to start calling your
worst? We are the shittiest.
We're the worst.
Yeah.
Is it time to start calling your senator or your representative or your state rep or your city council person and let them know what your opinion is? Is it
or
time
just
to write?
Shoot the shit.
Yeah, or just hey, what's up, buddy? Hey,
what's up?
How are you?
Hey, Mike Lee. How are you doing? Let's talk about you.
it might be time to write to your local newspaper and try and get a secular opinion piece published. And I want to be clear. I know that many of you are doing much of this and more, and you have been for some time, and you deserve all the gratitude in the universe. But we are going, if we are going to be a counterweight against the bevy of religious snidely whiplashes out there looking to build up the kingdom of God, we are all going to have to pitch in at whatever level we can. One thing is absolute, and I this better be true for everyone listening to this podcast and everyone you know. We are all going to put together a well-stocked and thoughtful emergency kit for our houses when this is over, right?
And as we're discovering, it needs to include a lot of booze. So
exactly.
I really thought you were going to say toilet paper just then, but okay.
Hey,
yeah,
can I just
and toilet paper, but it's not to interrupt you, Doug, but it's funny. Because I'm a crazy person. It's during this crazy quarantining and everything that I've decided to flirt more than usual with sobriety, and that's a crazy thing to do, but saves me trips to the liquor store.
I know. I looked at my very recently well-stocked liquor shelf last night and was like, fuck. So, I think that's it. That's kind of me up on my soapbox. It's up to us. No one is coming to save us. We're it. So listeners, that are hearing my voice, be safe. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We're going to get through this. And then let's all do our part to build the world that we deserve, not the one we were stuck with 6 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. No,
I like that idea. I will say this. I want to take a little bit of the pressure off because for a lot of our listeners, I want to just say, look, so if the only achievement that you achieve during this is surviving an international plague, sometimes that's enough.
You did good.
Just surviving is great. But if you have the wherewithal to do more, I do love the idea that now's an interesting time to sort of change how things work. And by the way, as you say, like these people are still going to church. They're culling their own herd. So we may have a little bit more of an advantage by the time we leave this than we did going in.
Well, I think I heard Tom and Cecil say that, that the virus does not select Christians and conservatives, but Christians and conservatives are definitely selecting the virus.
Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, it's going to slop over on all of us. But that's the truth. And there's just this one of the real fundamental flaws in society that this is showing, and they are legion, is how this bullshit bad information system that is especially acute on the conservative side is going to cost tens of thousands of lives. Yeah. And so that's one point. And I would also just say, I agree with everything Doug said, but I would just say about, as a person who's come out twice as gay and an atheist, I would say, police across the world are reporting right now that the biggest spike in crime is domestic violence.
Yeah, that's true.
So people are cooped up together, and that's, if you have a person with violent predispositions in your life, this is not going to be the best time right now necessarily to make some of those big life changes like coming out. But I think, Doug, you were referring to after the fact, right?
Yeah, most of this is we can all be writing letters and, taking up these hobbies in our quarantine. But there will be a post-quarantine world that's going to look very different. And that's my point is, we've existed kind of in the shadows and on the margins for a very long time. And this new world is hopefully going to have a newfound respect for science and truth.
Yeah.
And that's the sunlight that we live under. That's what got us to where we are now is, understanding what is in reality and not some stupid fucking book or some stupid fucking pastor's sayings. And why the fuck do you have to go to church anyway? What's there?
Yeah.
Like what are you going to find out this week that you would have missed if you didn't go?
Right. Yeah, I think I hope that what comes out of this, and I'm such a stupid fucking naive optimist, but what I hope comes out of this myself is that we're now seeing that it is not football players and hedge fund managers that are essential to society. Right. It's the people who have been fucked by the economic system that those people have perpetuated that are essential to society. And they're, many of them are listening to the show, and they are grocery stockers, they're delivery drivers, they're in-home healthcare people, they're teachers that are trying to maintain a school year in the midst of insanity.
Yeah.
So
and truly, how grateful are we all that our garbage gets picked up, right?
Oh, my God.
That somebody's still doing that fucking service for us.
Yeah. Those are the essential people in society. And maybe we will learn to value them differently after this is over, And
you're way more optimistic than I am.
But I mean, to reiterate my point, if we are going to venerate those people correctly, if we are going to reorient and rework our priorities and what we see as essential, we're going to have to do that. That's you know what I mean? Like, it's up to us to realize that world, because the people currently running the world don't give a flying fuck. They just want your money.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and they keep saying it. They keep saying out loud, what we care about is our stock portfolios, not you and your people. That's it. I don't know how many times and in how many ways they have to say it before America believes them. But at very least, we can amplify the message that no, what matters is people. What matters is people having safe and reasonable lives, and being able to live with some degree of comfort and safety is far more important than how many billions a billionaire is able to say they have.
Right.
Yeah, and part of how you value those people is how you pay them. And one hopes that will change after this, but one has been wrong before.
Yeah, but
indeed.
Again, we got to do more than hope. It's on us.
All right.
Yeah. Well, it's an excellent message.
Yay.
Let's plan for the aftermath, and once we all crawl out of the bunkers, we'll kick some ass.
That's right.
Charge!
Well, friends, that's it for this week's technically almost impossible show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you are hoarding N95 masks, you can leave us a voicemail with your address in it at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. Or you can tell me about it on Twitter. I'm there at HowToHeretic.
And as always, thanks to our incredible patrons.
Yeah, and thanks to Cody Layton, who is our original Flood Story, for editing the show.
And thank all of you lovely people for listening.
Yep. Stay safe out there.
Bye, friends.